temporary job at a canning factory. The town was small, quiet, and surrounded year-round by cornfields so vast you couldn't see where they ended. The place I rented was a converted warehouse room, just one window facing the corn and a single yellow bulb that flickered like it was on its last breath. The first night, I slept poorly because of a strange sound. Breathing. Not wind, not insects. Breathing, long and deep, like someone was standing right outside the window without ever getting tired. I jolted upright and looked out. Only the silhouettes of corn swaying. I tried to calm myself. Probably the wind, but wind doesn't breathe like that. On the third night, while I was lying in bed, I heard something scratching the wooden wall. Light, long, and persistent. I crept closer, heart hammering. The wall stopped vibrating. Then from the other side of it, very close, came a whisper. Don't look at the field when they rise. I froze, unable to breathe. That whisper didn't sound human. It was so deep it felt like it was coming from the earth itself. I ignored it, tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. But on the sixth night, I made a mistake. I heard dragging footsteps outside, like someone moving without lifting their feet. I parted the curtain. The field was swallowed in darkness. No one there. Then I saw the rows of corn in the distance suddenly stand upright, even though there wasn't a breeze. Figures began rising from the soil between the stalks. Tall, thin bodies with smooth, wax-like skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. A perfectly blank face. They stood motionless like statues, yet I could feel them staring at me. One of them tilted its head to the side, and as it did, the skin across its face stretched tight, as if something underneath was shifting. I stepped back, my hands shook. That's when I heard them, not with my ears, in my head. Don't run. I stumbled backward. The light went out. The entire room sank into darkness. My foot touched something cold and damp. I looked down. Soil. The soil was crawling up the floor, wrapping around my leg. I screamed and yanked my foot back, but it stuck like thick mud. The scratching outside shifted into a wet scraping sound, like dozens of hands raking along the walls. I knew if I didn't get out, I'd be pulled under the earth just like they rose from it. I tore myself free and bolted for the door. But when I opened it, I wasn't in the yard anymore. I was standing in the middle of the cornfield, I don't know how. The faceless beings stood in a ring around me. Their bodies pulsed, rising and falling like they were breathing with their entire torsos. One stepped forward. I tried to run, but my mind blurred, my limbs numbed. My skin began cracking like dry soil. The cracks widened, revealing dark flesh beneath. A long, icy finger dragged from my cheek to my chin. My skin split open as easily as wet paper. I tried to scream, but my throat filled with mud. Inside my head, its voice whispered, "Breathe in." I didn't want to, but my lungs obeyed it. I inhaled and felt soil flood into my chest, heavy, cold, damp, like I was breathing in the ancient earth itself. They placed their hands on my face, smoothing it gently, like potters shaping clay. "We will weave you a new face." The skin on my face swelled as something crawled beneath it. A tiny lump formed under my cheekbone, then bulged outward. A small hole opened, like an eye trying to push its way out. Just then, a powerful flashlight beam cut through the dark. A shout, "Back off!" A man burst through the corn, grabbing me. The light made the faceless shriek as if burning, retreating slowly. He yelled, "Run! Before the earth drinks your feet!" I looked down. The soil had already risen to my knees. He yanked hard, tearing me free. It felt like losing a piece of myself, but there was no blood, only soil falling off. We raced through the corn. The stalks twisted like they were trying to grab me. Between the rows, the faceless rose again, their necks twisting 180 degrees, their bodies bending in impossible ways. At last he dragged me into an old wooden shack at the edge of the field. He slammed the door. 7 locks clattered into place. I collapsed, breathless, my cheeks still swollen, the hole widening, now looking like an unfinished eye trying to see me from inside. He stared at me with a mix of pity and dread. "You breathed their soil," he said, "not normal soil. The soil of those who live beneath the field." My voice shook. "What are they?" He lowered his head. His voice trembled but carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. "They were people once, lost their faces, lost their names, lost their voices. The earth kept them, the earth wants more." He looked straight at me. "And you're beginning to belong to them." I touched my face. The small hole had widened, now unmistakably like a half-formed eye, slowly opening. I felt something moving beneath the skin, trying to tear its way out. And beneath the floorboards, I heard the soil breathing. The wooden floor shook gently as if something were crawling beneath it. The man pointed his flashlight downward, trying to block whatever moved in the cracks. He told me to sit against the wall, away from the door. I couldn't stand anymore. My legs felt heavy, packed with soil. My skin kept splitting into deep cracks, and beneath them was a thick, tar-black colour. He looked at me, his flashlight trembling. "You've got a few minutes before the soil takes over your lungs. I'm going to try to pull you back." I breathed and heard the dirt shifting inside my chest like sand in an hourglass. Every inhale made the world dim a little more. "Utch. How?" I could only speak one word at a time. My mouth burned. My teeth felt loose, ready to fall out. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small glass jar, filled with something that glowed a faint greenish gold, like phosphor dust. "The ashes of the last ones who stayed human," he said. "We use it to hold the soil back. It won't cure you. It only slows it." He opened the jar, took a pinch of ash, and sprinkled it over the cracks on my shoulder. The moment the ash touched my skin, I heard a shriek. Not from me, but from the thing crawling beneath my skin. The fissures twitched, sealing shut for a few seconds before reopening, like wounds trying to flee from what he was sprinkling. "Keep it. Whatever's left, hold on to it," he shouted. He shoved the jar into my hand. I could barely feel my fingers, but I clutched it with whatever strength I had left. "Who are you?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Outside, the cornfield began to move, not from the wind, but like dozens of long bodies slid beneath the ground, lifting and dropping the earth with every shift. He whispered, "I used to be their field warden, back when I still had a face." A cold shock tore through my spine. Suddenly the wooden door thudded, once, then again. The faceless things were slamming their heads into it. No voices, no words. Just the slow, deliberate cracking of wood giving way. He flicked the flashlight to its brightest setting, aiming it at the door. "They can't come in as long as there's light," he said, "but the battery won't last." I felt the hole on my cheek widen. A moment later I saw a wet, cloudy eyeball opened from inside my own flesh, staring at him. He stared back for a long, quiet moment. "You need to go," he whispered. "You can still run. I can't." I shook my head. "You'll die," he laughed, but it wasn't laughter, just a dry breath. "I died the night the earth took my face. You're the only living one left here." The door splintered as a long, branch-like arm slid inside, claws scraping deep lines across the floorboards. The man grabbed my shoulder, his eyes steady. "Listen carefully. Don't look at their faces. Don't let them touch you. And when you get out of the field, don't look back." He tossed me a spare flashlight. "Run!" He shoved me through the back door of the shack. I heard him shout one last word. "Go!" I bolted into the dark, tearing through the corn. The flashlight shook violently in my hand. The faceless ones rose from the rows on either side, reaching for me. I sprinkled ash wherever the soil crept up my legs. The ash ignited red as it touched the dirt, making them screech. Every step was a knife in my lungs. My stomach felt like stone. The eye on my cheek blinked, straining, trying to look backward. I didn't let it. I reached the edge of the field. A broken street lamp stood alone in an empty patch of dirt. The only light was from my flashlight. I stopped to breathe, and then I heard it, not breathing, not scratching, but a voice from the eye on my cheek. "Don't leave them behind," I cried out, half in pain, half in terror. "Shut up! We are one! No!" I stomped the ground, spilling some of the ash. Behind me, the entire field stood upright. Dozens, then hundreds of faceless beings stepped out of the corn like a wordless army. All facing me, all perfectly still, all breathing as one. The eye on my cheek dilated until the pupils swallowed everything. "You belong to the soil." With the last of the ash, I raised my hand. "No," I gasped. "I don't belong to you." I tilted my head back and swallowed all the remaining ash. My body caught fire from the inside, but not with flames. With light, a yellow-green radiance. The dirt inside me shattered. The eye on my cheek convulsed, screamed in my own voice, then melted like boiling wax. I collapsed. My heart hammered against my ribs. My lungs were clean and burning. Before I blacked out, I saw the faceless ones retreat back into the field. A few necks twisted a slow, unnatural 270 degrees like they were reluctant to leave. Then they vanished. I woke up in the town hospital the next morning. The police found me on the highway, covered in dirt. My face split with dry cracks, but still human. That night, I finally looked in a mirror. No eye, no soil, just skin, scarred and cracked, but mine. I almost sighed in relief, until I heard it. Very soft. From under the hospital bed, the earth breathing. Then a whisper crept upward. "You sprinkle ash well, but the field does not forget."
I came to the town of Redwood Hill, Oregon, to document material for a book about abandoned forests in America. I rented an old cabin right at the edge of the woods, a place the locals only called the Old Line, the boundary between the residential area and the forest that they always avoided once the sun went down. The cabin was covered in dust, the wood creaked every time I stepped, and there wasn't a single mirror. The frame on the wall was still there, but the mirror surface had been completely removed, leaving behind old adhesive, twisted and warped, like someone's fingernails had scraped it off. On the first night, when I turned on the recorder, I heard the wind whistling from the forest. But mixed in with the wind was something else. Something that sounded like footsteps dragging across dry leaves, long and slow. I looked out the window. The entire forest stood still. But about 30 meters away, between two trees, there was a shadow. Tall, unnaturally tall. It stood there, straight, facing the cabin. I turned on the flashlight and pointed it toward the figure. The beam landed on a pale white face, smooth as if wrapped in flat skin, with no eyes, no nose, no mouth. I immediately turned off the light, my heart pounding as if it would burst from my chest. When I turned it back on, it was already gone. At midnight, I was awakened by soft tapping on the cabin window. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks, steady, emotionless. I stayed still, but the tapping moved. From the window on the left, then the right, then behind the head of my bed. A voice echoed inside my head, not through my ears. "Open the curtains." The voice was flat, emotionless, striking directly into my thoughts. I froze, trying not to think, but the voice whispered again, "We can't see you." The next morning, I went to the only bar in Redwood Hill. When I asked about the creature in the woods, the entire bar went silent. The owner, who had lived there for more than 40 years, spoke quietly. "Here, we don't stand near windows when it's dark. No one looks into the forest, and never look when it turns its head." I asked, "What is it?" He only said, "Once you see its face, it's over." That night, I heard bones crackling outside, something tall moving around the cabin like a beast sniffing its prey. When I turned on the flashlight, through the slit of the curtain, I saw 3 white figures standing in a row, nearly twice as tall as an average person. They didn't move, didn't blink, because they had no eyes to blink. Suddenly, all 3 necks twisted backward at once, a full 180 degrees, cracking like dry branches snapping. The voice echoed in my head again. "Don't look when we turn." Panicked, I stumbled backward, accidentally knocking over the recorder. When I bent down to pick it up, I realized the footsteps had reached the porch. The doorknob turned slightly, the metal groaning. The door wasn't locked. I ran into the bedroom, blocking the door with a wooden dresser. In the silence that followed, I heard breathing right outside the door. Not human breathing, but like compressed wind forced through an empty shape that wasn't quite real. Then a long, wax-white hand slid under the crack of the door, groping, searching for a way in. Its fingers were twice the length of a human's, and when one of them touched my leg, my skin burned cold as if pressed against a tombstone. The voice echoed again. "Your face fits us." I shined a high-powered flashlight directly at the crack. The hand recoiled instantly, making a sound like steam being sucked out of a pipe. They disappeared. But in the bedroom, on the wall opposite the bed, there was something I had never seen before. A mirror. A mirror that hadn't existed the night before. Its surface was dark, like water, distorted. I approached it, my hands trembling uncontrollably. And in the mirror, I saw not me. The mirror reflected the room, the bed, the window, but not my face. The mirror showed a smooth, featureless white face, emotionless, expressionless. Behind me in the reflection stood tall shadows pressed against my back, stretching out like roots. I spun around. No one was there. But the mirror remained, and inside it, those beings were moving closer, each blink bringing them several steps nearer. I bolted out of the cabin, sprinting down the dirt road, not daring to stop or look back. When I reached the main road, I looked into the window of a parked truck. This time, my face was visible, but on my left cheek was a long, sunken handprint, as if stamped onto my skin. And from that moment until today, every time I look in a mirror, sometimes in the corner, far away, I see a tall white shadow standing still, watching me, waiting for me to look when it turns its head. Just one small mistake, and my face will belong to them. I left the hotel the next morning, even though I had barely slept all night, because that thing stood in the corner of the room until daylight. When sunlight came through the curtains, it vanished, as if burned away by the day. I thought I was free. But when I looked in the mirror, in the gas station restroom on the outskirts of town, I froze. The mirror reflected behind my back a white figure standing right over my left shoulder, even though when I turned around, there was no one there. Its face was smooth and featureless, but in the middle of that blank white surface appeared something that made my stomach twist. My nose. Not fully formed yet, but taking shape, as if it had copied a part of me. I ran out of there, got in my car, and kept driving. But when night fell, the radio in my car turned on by itself, filled with static, then began broadcasting my own voice, but with no emotion. I like mirrors. I want a face. I turned off the radio, and it turned itself back on. My voice laughed, but the laugh didn't sound human, distorted, as if coming through an empty throat. I turned into a larger town and went to the police station, thinking that at least a place with lights, cameras, and people would be safer. I told them everything, and they looked at me like I was insane, but still let me sit in the observation room while they checked the hotel cameras. When they reached the footage from that night, the one where I was half asleep, they played it back very slowly. In the corner of the room, exactly where I had seen it, the camera captured a long, white distortion shaped like a human body, standing still for 7 straight hours without moving. Then the final moment, when dawn arrived, it slid backward into the darkness like a sheet being pulled away, disappearing completely. At that moment, the officer monitoring the camera turned pale. He said, "That thing isn't human." But what made his hands tremble was the next video, the hallway camera outside my hotel room. From a hidden corner, a white, tall figure over 2 meters tall, faceless, stepped out of my room after leaving the spot inside, and on its flat, white face appeared a very familiar pair of eyes. My eyes. The police immediately asked me to stay in the station overnight. They assigned 3 officers to guard. At midnight, the alarm went off. The front door had opened. They said someone had broken in, but when they checked the cameras, none of the doors were forced, no footprints anywhere. There was only one recording that made the whole room fall silent. Myself, or something that looked like me, walking into the station through the front door, passing straight through the officer on duty as if he didn't exist, then disappearing after reaching exactly the holding cell where I was sleeping. I jolted awake when I felt cold breath on my neck. In the dark room, lit only by the faint hallway light spilling in that shadow, right beside my bed, was the pale thing bending over me, not looking at me with eyes, but with the face of mine that it had just grafted onto itself. It whispered with my own voice, "I have the eyes. Now I need the mouth." Then it raised its hand and touched my lips, its fingernails long and cold like metal. Right at that moment, every light in the station turned on, and it vanished like evaporated air. But my lips remained frozen cold, as if frostbitten. The next morning, I decided to flee Montana, go anywhere as far away as possible. On my way out of the state, I stopped at an old convenience store to buy coffee. The cashier stared at me for a long time before saying something that made my blood freeze. "Who's following you?" I said, "No one." She pointed to the camera screen at the counter. "No, I mean, the person standing right behind you." I turned around. No one there. But on the black and white camera monitor, right behind me was a tall, white figure with a face exactly like mine, so perfect I couldn't tell which one was real. It tilted its head, its mouth forming a smile I never knew I could make. At that moment, the camera flickered, and it raised its hand to place it on my shoulder. In real life, I felt nothing, except a coldness drilling into my bones. But in the last second, before the screen went completely static, I saw its mouth open, and behind the teeth was a deep darkness, like the entrance to a place not meant for humans. Now I understand. The faceless ones don't take lives. They want something far more important: identity. They want a form to exist in the light. And they have chosen mine.